Hope everyone has been having a good day today. It is 6:55 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on a Thursday. So I've been going over the Cohen hearings. I still say that this hearing was an amazing thing to watch. You could sit there, eat popcorn, and essentially watch it. Republicans cast him as a rat, as a turncoat, this guy who would turn on his own client and expose this information, whereas the Democrats have cast this in redemptive terms. Cohen is come to Jesus, and he's essentially telling on all of these things that Donald Trump has done, clearing his conscience of sorts. Cohen, I've done multiple videos on this, and I'm going to do one or two more. I've done one video. I'm going to do another one after this one. But in the first video, I kind of made the point that the elements of the Russiagate conspiracy that involved Cohen were being dismantled. I mean, Cohen did Trump no favors in this testimony, but the one thing that came across was that the news stories that were coming out wrapped around the Russiagate conspiracy were being taken apart. The BuzzFeed story saying that Donald Trump directed Cohen to lie. Cohen flat out, no, that is not what took place. The other issue associated with Cohen being in Prague that Richmond screams one conspiracy theory after another about. Again, no, that's not true. Even why Cohen lied, or why Donald Trump lied about the Trump Tower meeting, well, that had more to do with you guys are attacking him relentlessly on this thing with Russia, and he doesn't necessarily want to give anything away on that and make this worse than what it is. Also, they didn't expect to win the presidency. And not expecting to win the presidency, they didn't want to leave money on the table. So they tried to keep the deal going, thinking that they were going to lose the deal and then come back to it after the race. Well, they won the presidency, and people started asking questions about these things. Also, there's another one where Cohen says he doesn't have any direct knowledge of Russiagate. When he's talking about WikiLeaks, he makes the point that Donald Trump told him that he heard from Julian Assange or something to that effect. But that Roger Stone, and that Roger Stone said that information is going to be coming out in a couple of days. Well, if Roger Stone did indeed say that, Roger Stone wouldn't have had any new information that the public wouldn't have had, because Julian Assange or WikiLeaks has already said and dictated that it was going to come out with their stories. So it's like one story after the next that was taken down by Cohen in his testimony. There was one other point that was small that people might not have paid attention to, that Cohen said that Donald Trump continuously said, I had nothing to do with this, there is no Russiagate stuff, this is a witch hunt, etc., etc. He was even saying this behind the scenes. Cohen said, well, I took that, to be on message. Or is it possible that Trump was just saying, there was no Russiagate thing, this is a witch hunt, there is no collusion, because there was no collusion and there was no Russiagate thing. Kind of the problem with being a flagrant liar is that even when you tell the truth, people think that you're lying because you've been a flagrant liar. Cohen makes the point that people came to work every day knowing that they were going to lie for Trump. And that probably has an element of truth to it, even though this is somewhat of an embittered person at this point, who's telling on his own client. It doesn't mean that what he's saying is lying. It doesn't mean what he's saying is wrong. I'm just saying that this is not a person who's working without political pressure being applied to him and making a free choice. This is a person who has enormous political pressure applied to him and is going to prison because of such. So, just saying. Well, he lied to Congress, but, he wouldn't have lied to Congress. He would never have been arrested, and the Russiagate conspiracy hadn't taken over. So that's that point. But I also made the point that Cohen did Trump no favors here. There was nothing for the Russiagate conspiracy stuff, but that didn't stop them from digging into other elements that had nothing to do with the Russiagate conspiracy, meaning Trump's taxes, Trump's business dealings, Trump University buying a painting that Donald Trump is essentially has hanging in one of his offices, meaning the Trump organization that was supposed to be a charity buying something for Donald Trump himself as a person that Donald Trump could have easily afforded if he was quote-unquote a billionaire. In some cases, deflating his assets to make it look like he has less money than what he has, so he would pay less taxes. In other cases, inflating his assets, so on issues like Forbes, he can look richer than what he actually is. And paying off a porn star. Now, this is probably the thing that's going to be a pain in Trump's ass, because I always ask the question, why did Bill Clinton get impeached? And what was the original inception of all of this? It was an investigation. Why would investigation? They moved so far away from the original point that at some point this became a political hit job. Same thing with Trump here. They moved so far away from the point that they're talking about stuff that has nothing to do with the Russiagate stuff, but they're digging in it nonetheless. It's a political hit job to some degree. They're using political elements in the terrain that they have in order to score additional points on Trump. It was the same thing with Clinton. It's what is taking place now. So on the second point, Cohen goes after Trump relentlessly in this hearing. And like I said, inflating assets, paying off porn stars or hush money to porn stars, threatening high school and college so that they wouldn't release his records. In one case, lying to Congress. He says he already lied to Congress. Like I said, the deflation of the assets in some cases and inflating the assets in other cases to make himself look richer than others. Also, just crummy behavior, like not paying businesses or reveling in not paying businesses, getting services from a business and saying, all right, we're not going to pay you now for what we said we were going to pay you as, so you're going to have to come to some kind of terms on getting and receiving less, or otherwise we're just going to go to court, we're going to hash it out in court. Like that stuff. And then getting a kick out of it. Yes! Cheating businesses! Yes! Yes! That's what I'm going to do. Cohen details this stuff, chapter and verse, in amazing detail. It is damning. I'm sorry. It is completely and entirely damning. Nothing to do with Russia. Nothing to do with Russia. Everything to do with Trump. So take a look at this. This is Washington Post giving a little summary of Cohen's thing, and I want to go into other parts of Cohen's testimony. And I'm going to try to go through them relatively quickly. They're small segments, like 1 or 2 minutes apiece. But I want to give you the spirit of what Cohen was saying with in regards to Trump. I have another video where I want to talk about a claim of racism because somebody was being used as a prop to push back on claims of racism by Trump. He calls Trump a racist and a con man. Let's see.
Let's see. Aleve is proven better.
Damn it. I hate it when they do that.
Better on pain than Tylenol Extra Strength and lasts longer with fewer pills.
All right. Let's do it that way. Let's meet that tab. So I'm going to show you the Washington Post's summary of this, of Cohen's testimony. And then I'm going to go through elements of the testimony himself when he was responding to congressional members when they were talking. So let's go to this one first.
Wound up touting the Trump narrative for over a decade. That was my job. Always stay on message. Always defend. Mr. Trump directed me to find a straw bidder to purchase a portrait of him that was being auctioned off. Mr. Trump directed the Trump Foundation, which is supposed to be a charitable organization, to repay the fake bidder, despite keeping the art for himself. One of my more common responsibilities was that Mr. Trump directed me to call business owners, many of whom are small businesses that were owed money for their services, and told them that no payment or a reduced payment would be coming. When I asked Mr. Trump, or when I told Mr. Trump of my success, he actually reveled in it. He asked me to pay off.
Of all these, that one is really fucked up. Like, this is not you not being able to afford a medical bill because the bill is some ridiculous amount and you don't have the means to do it. This is not you being able to afford something that you may want, maybe a vacation, maybe, something for your kid, maybe something for Christmas, maybe a gift, whatever. This is not you not having the resources to do something, meaning an individual not being able to pay for a service. This is a business person who's supposedly a billionaire who has the money to pay for the services that he's used from these small businesses who just don't do it. I'm just going to get by. I'm going to keep a certain degree of money that I've agreed upon that I can pay, but I'm just not going to. I'm going to cheat the people who I'm dealing with because, hey, it's one of the ways I can be richer. And then getting a kick out of this is Oh, that's gross. That's gross. That's gross. God, 1,000 times. That is gross. Let's let him keep going though. Let's
An
continue.
adult film star with whom he had an affair, and to lie about it to his wife, which I did.
Oh, that's brutal. That's brutal. Like, so if he stopped there, I had to pay off an adult film star. I can kind of see that. If I'm running for the presidency of the United States, I don't want the fact that I had sex with a porn star to be all over the airwaves. Not necessarily anything wrong with being a porn star. Not necessarily anything wrong having sex with a porn star. That issue is wrong from the perspective of your marriage because you're cheating on your wife. But from a political standpoint, I don't care. It's none of my business. That's between him and Ivanka. They can deal with that particular issue of infidelity. I don't have to deal with that issue. From a political standpoint, does it say anything about the person? No, it doesn't. It doesn't say anything about the person at all. There are certain drives, and there are certain cultural norms, and those drives are out of alignment with cultural norms, in which case people tend to cheat. Also, there's a secondary thing of, does it shock me that Donald Trump will have sex with a porn star? No, it doesn't. Do people have this idea of Donald Trump in this kind of glorious terms? No, they don't. Meaning, you don't pay off the person for that. I'm just saying, you don't pay it off. It doesn't hurt you per se. It's already baked into the cake. People already have a perception of you where that's not going to matter. That fits under the current perception of you. So I don't necessarily know if that hurts you. A video comes out with you saying, I'm going to grab women by the pussy. And again, that didn't particularly hurt you, which means the porn stuff wouldn't have necessarily hurt you. The thing is, if you're in the perspective of Trump on this, is that difficult to see from where you are? Maybe. But that may have political consequences. So that may not necessarily be just a minor thing. Let's let him keep going. But my point is, you don't pay off the porn star if your name is Donald Trump.
Mr. Trump directed me to use my own personal funds from a home equity line of credit.
By the way, the other problem with that is, even with all the porn star stuff, the part that becomes brutal is, and told me to lie to his wife. Oh, that's brutal. That's brutal. It's one thing to pay off the porn star. I look at that as, okay, fair enough. The guy's, he's trying to cover his tracks on something that's personal, but okay, fair enough. I can understand the mentality that gets to that point. But then it's after he cheated on his wife, and after I paid off the porn star in order to shut up about the fact that he cheated on his wife and had sex with a porn star, he got me, mind you, client relationship, to also tell that lie to his wife. Oh, that's brutal. That's brutal. That's brutal.
To avoid any money being traced back to him that could negatively impact his campaign. And I did that too. Directed me to threaten his high school, his colleges, and the college board to never release his grades or SAT scores. I'm giving the committee today copies of a letter I sent at Mr. Trump's direction, threatening these schools with civil and criminal actions if Mr. Trump's grades or SAT scores were ever disclosed without his permission. Mr. Trump tasked me to handle the negative press surrounding his medical deferment from the Vietnam draft.
Just to put a pin in how also, God, this is like brutal. If you remember, Donald Trump comes out with the birther stuff. Obama wasn't born here, he's a Kenyan. Now, this is utter nonsense, but again, just like Democrats pushing the Russia conspiracy stuff, it doesn't necessarily matter whether it's nonsense. They just want to push it in order to hit their opponent. Okay, so fair enough. Part of the element that Donald Trump pushed in that, though, if you remember when Obama came out in this indignity, pushed forth that Trump was essentially spearheading, comes out, shows his birth certificate. What does Trump say? Trump says, yeah, but what about his college, his schools? What about his schools? Maybe those schools aren't real. And start questioning his grades. And in this case, Cohen is making a point that Donald Trump was threatening people not to release his grades or his SAT scores I will tell you this. If his grades and his SAT scores were fucking marvelous, he wouldn't be suing them or trying to threaten them not to release them. Probably a D student who got by purely on his dad. Let's keep a look at this. I'm sorry, that hypocrisy right there is amazing. Let's keep going.
I was involved in several of these catch and kill episodes. There were times that I was asked, again with Alan Weisselberg, the CFO, to go back and to speak with an individual from Forbes, because Mr. Trump wanted each year to have his net worth rise on the Forbes wealthiest individuals list. These financial statements were used by me when we were dealing later on with insurance companies. We would provide them with these copies so that they would understand that the premium, which is based sometimes upon the individual's capabilities to pay, would be reduced. These documents and others were provided to Deutsche Bank on one occasion where I was with them in our attempt to obtain money so that we can put a bid on the Buffalo Bills. Everybody's job at the Trump Organization is to protect Mr. Trump. Every day, most of us knew we were coming in and we were going to lie for him.
That's fucking brutal, man. That's brutal. You're talking about a broadside. What I tell you is nothing to do with Trump and Russia. That was the inception of all of this. Everything to do with putting a knife in Donald Trump. And that's exactly what he was doing. And by the way, this testimony gets worse. It gets worse. So let's go through some of this. All right, there, right here. So he's going to call Trump a racist, a con man, and a
Thank you for inviting me here today. I had asked this committee to ensure that my family be protected from presidential threats and that the committee be sensitive to the questions pertaining to ongoing investigations. I thank you for your help and for your understanding. I am here under oath to correct the record, to answer the committee's questions truthfully, and to offer the American people what I know about President Trump. I recognize that some of you may doubt and attack me on my credibility. It is for this reason that I have incorporated into this opening statement documents that are irrefutable and demonstrate that the information you will hear is accurate and truthful. Never in a million years did I imagine, when I accepted a job in 2007 to work for Donald Trump, that he would one day run for the presidency, to launch a campaign on a platform of hate and intolerance, and actively win. I regret the day I said yes to Mr. Trump. I regret all the help and support I gave him along the way. I am ashamed of my own failings and publicly accepted responsibility for them by pleading guilty in the Southern District of New York. I am ashamed of my weakness and my misplaced loyalty, of the things I did for Mr. Trump in an effort to protect and promote him.
Is it just me? There's something about this that rubs me the wrong way, like nobody's business. And, you know, this is not somebody who supports Trump in any measure at all. But this feels weird to me. I don't get... Cohen supports Trump for God knows how many years. And in supporting Trump, being his personal lawyer for all those years, and he enunciates one thing after the next that he did for Trump that was underhanded, that was shady, duplicitous, just outright morally wrong, even from a business sense or even from a fairness sense. And he's done this for years. He was outraged when they raided his house. He should have been outraged when they raided his house because it came across as a political raid. But in this very particular case, it's a repudiation of everything that he's done over the course of these years. Now, it sounds like what he's been doing has been bad things over the course of these years, so fair enough. But this outright, entire, complete repudiation just comes across as overtly political in the way that it's being expressed. It's an outright repudiation of Trump, and even going so far as to get across to people who are around Trump to get out while you can, because this is the end of the road. This is where you're going to end up. I'm sorry for everything that I've done. Please, I'm an awful human being. And Donald Trump was the one who pushed me to be this awful human being. I mean, it comes across a little thick, that's all. Everything he's saying may be true, I'm just saying it comes across a little thick. This was his lawyer. Is there no such thing as lawyer-client relationship, meaning lawyer-client privilege? And it seems like he's blowing it away in this testimony. It wasn't done because, life was going great. It wasn't done because he just kind of had it come to Jesus. It was done because, one of the parties that were in the political space got an investigation started. And getting that investigation started, meaning screaming, hollering at the top of their lungs, that Russia did something in the elections, that inspired an investigation. In which case, political pressure was being applied to various people who were associated with Donald Trump, not connected with Russia. Clear point. But still, nonetheless, swept up in this kind of campaign against Trump. All started on Russia-Trump collusion, even though the Russia-Trump collusion thing didn't exist. It's just amazing that this is taking place in this way. That's all. And the allowing lawyers to do this is a little sketchy to me. But let's keep going.
I am ashamed that I chose to take part in concealing Mr. Trump's illicit acts rather than listening to my own conscience. I am ashamed because I know what Mr. Trump is. He is a racist, he is a con man, and he is a cheat. He was a presidential
racist, con man, and a cheat. Not just one of those things, not just two of those things, but all of those things combined. In
Chairman Cummings.
Again, I have no reason to doubt this. My argument has just been that the Trump and Russia collusion thing was nonsense. But my argument has simultaneously been, I would not be shocked or surprised at all if Donald Trump had some kind of business dealings that were underhanded or that were not above board and that may be criminal in their nature. And reports have been coming out about stuff like that. Cohen, being Trump's lawyer, is intimate with the knowledge of this stuff. So that this becomes somewhat of a mind-blowing thing to watch, assuming that what he's saying is true. Cohen may be embittered by this process, so fair enough, the Republicans' argument on this may be right to some degree, but it doesn't necessarily mean that what Cohen is saying is wrong. It's like, I can be mad at you, and I can be telling you stuff out of anger, but each and everything that I'm saying about you is absolutely true. It's just shit that I don't say under normal circumstances. And the same thing can be true here. So let's keep going. There's more. All right, right here. Trump knew about the Moscow negotiations. This is what he's going to say in this one.
To Congress about the timing of the Moscow Tower negotiations before I gave it. So to be clear, Mr. Trump knew of and directed the Trump-Moscow negotiations throughout the campaign and lied about it. He lied about it because he never expected to win. He also lied about it because he stood to make hundreds of millions of dollars on the Moscow real estate project. And so I lied about it too, because Mr. Trump had made clear to me through his personal statements to me that we both knew to be false, and through his lies to the country that he wanted me to lie.
Now, assume for the moment that that's true. What does that really tell you about anything? It doesn't really tell you anything, right? I mean, Donald Trump lied to the country, and Donald Trump lied in regards to his timing with the meeting for the Moscow thing. But Cohen kind of makes the point that the reason he lied had everything to do with him being greedy. He didn't think he was going to win, and he had a lot of money to make on this particular project, so he thought he can always go back to it. There's nothing nefarious from the standpoint of Trump and Russia. It's everything to do with the business thing. If you want to hit him for that, fair enough, hit him for that. But let's be very clear what it is. Not Trump and Russia. It's Trump trying to make a ton of cash. Here's another one. Well, I'll just say it. He ran as a marketing ploy. Meaning Donald Trump ran in the presidential race. He thought he was going to lose, kind of like the Brexit thing. I'm giving you this because I think you're going to lose. But he ran with it with no intention of winning the presidency, with every intention of using this as a marketing ploy, marketing device. Here's another one that he comes up. Trump inflates his total assets.
Mr. Trump court white supremacists and bigots. You have heard him. Mr. Trump is a racist. The country has seen Mr. Trump court white supremacists and bigots. You have heard him call poorer countries shitholes. In private, he is even worse. He once asked me if I could name a country run by a black person that wasn't a shithole. This was when Barack Obama was president of the United States. And while we were once driving through a struggling neighborhood in Chicago, he commented that only black people could live that way. And he told me that black people would never vote for him because they were too stupid. And yet, I continued to work for him. Mr. Trump is a cheat. As previously stated, I am giving to the committee today 3 years of Mr. Trump's personal financial statements from 2011, 2012, and 2013, which he gave to Deutsche Bank to inquire about a loan to buy the Buffalo Bills and to Forbes. These are exhibits 1A, 1B, and 1C to my testimony. It was my experience that Mr. Trump inflated his total assets when it served his purposes, such as trying to be listed amongst the wealthiest people in Forbes, and deflated his assets to reduce his real estate taxes.
So in this case, Trump lies, doesn't pay his fair share of taxes. Essentially, when he needs to, deflates the value so he can cut the amount of taxes that he pays. And in other cases, when he needs to, inflates the value to make himself seem richer than what he actually is. Let's keep going. There's more. All right, so this is the transfer money.
To his wife, which I did. And lying to the first. Mr. Trump is a con man. He asked me to pay off an adult film star with whom he had an affair, and to lie about it to his wife, which I did. And lying to the First Lady is one of my biggest regrets, because she is a kind, good person, and I respect her greatly, and she did not deserve that. And I'm giving the committee today a copy of the $130,000 wire transfer from me to Ms. Clifford's attorney during the closing days of the presidential campaign that was demanded by Ms. Clifford to maintain her silence about her affair with Mr. Trump. And this is Exhibit 4 to my testimony.
Wow.
Mr. Trump directed me to use my own personal funds from a home equity line of credit to avoid any money being traced back to him that could negatively impact his campaign. And I did that too, without bothering to consider whether that was improper, much less whether it was the right thing to do or how would it impact me, my family, or the public. And I am going to jail in part because of my decision to help Mr. Trump hide that payment from the American people before they voted a few days later.
Wow. God, man. Paid off a porn star. That's amazing. So they asked him to cover the deferments in Vietnam. He did that one. Didn't have anything on any kind of Russia collusion. Wrote the check out of his own personal finances. We did that one. All right, here's. God, man, I don't like Deborah Wasserman Schultz. Fuck her. I'm not doing that one. Yeah, I'm not doing that one at all. So let's go to this one, catch and kill deals. I didn't know what catch and kill deals meant. Cohen had to explain this, so I'm going to let him explain it. If you remember in the opening testimony, he mentioned that he was a part of these catch and kill deals. Listen to what this is.
With a news outlet, in this specific case, it was AMI.
Can you describe, Michael, to the American people, catch and kill?
So catch and kill is a method that exists when you're working with a news outlet. In this specific case, it was AMI, National Enquirer, David Pecker, Dylan Howard, and others, where they would contact me or Mr. Trump or someone and state that there's a story that's percolating out there that you may be interested in. And then what you do is you contact that individual and you purchase the rights to that story from them.
And you practice this for the president?
I was involved in several of these catch and kill episodes, but these catch and kill scenarios existed between David Pecker and Mr. Trump long before I started working for him in 2007.
Michael, can you suggest who else this committee should talk to for additional information on this or anything else?
Yes, I believe David.
So part of the point in this, again, nothing to do with Trump Russia, is that there are stories out there about Donald Trump that Donald Trump, for over the last X number of years, has been catching and killing essentially by paying them off in order to shut them up. The porn star was just one of many of those stories. At this point, I suppose that that's the way they were looking at it. And let's see, here's another one. Oh, God. I'm going to have to do a separate video on this. This was a racist thing. This came a big drama moment when one of the Republicans used a black woman as a prop in order to push back on claims against Donald Trump being racist. The representatives, one of or two of the representatives made the point that you doing that in and of itself is racist. Now, I don't necessarily think it's racist. I think it's a matter of politics. But she was casting it as racist. In which case, the person pushed back saying, you trying to cast this as racist is racist also. It was a fuckfest of a meeting. What's his name? Oh, his name dropped out of my head. Lewis had to kind of pull everybody back in order to make that work. But the Republican Meadows had his feelings hurt severely. He was triggered by that. He flipped out. I don't necessarily blame him for flipping out on it. He's like, no, I'm just using a matter of politics. This is not being racist. Not to mention, I don't think any white person necessarily likes to be called racist, even people who are. All right, here's another one. This is an interesting one. So they asked him, is there any other criminal wrongdoing? God, this video is going long, but I'm sorry. This was a 6-hour hearing, and it is hard to get to all of it, or even a large part of it because of how long it was. So they asked him, is there any criminal wrongdoing that is being investigated that we don't know about? Things that haven't necessarily aired or up to the public yet. Listen to what Cohen is saying over this. Because Cohen, being Trump's personal lawyer, may have access to these things if law enforcement contacted him about ongoing investigations dealing with his client. But that may not necessarily have reached to the public sphere yet. He's being asked, are there things out there that we don't necessarily know about that are taking place?
Unfortunately, this topic is actually something I would suspect it was.
Come on.
With President Trump or someone acting on his behalf?
I don't have the specific date, but it was a while ago.
Okay. Do you have a general time frame?
I would suspect it was within 2 months post the raid. of my home
Okay, so
hotel,
early fall of last year, generally?
generally.
And what did he or his agent communicate to you?
Unfortunately, this topic is actually something that's being investigated right now by the Southern District of New York, and I've been asked by them not to discuss and not to talk about these issues.
Fair enough. Is there any other wrongdoing or illegal act that you are aware of regarding Donald Trump that we haven't yet discussed today?
Yes, and again, those are part of the investigation that's currently being looked at by the Southern District of New York.
Donald Trump may have problems that go beyond the Russia investigation. If Cohen is right and there are other things being investigated, Donald Trump may have problems other than the Cohen investigation. Let's see. Here's another one. Donald Trump stiffed people who were for the hush money, for $150,000 in hush money. There's ongoing investigations that are not necessarily aired to the public yet. Let's see, is there anything else? Yes, there is actually. Rokana gets into... Okay, here's another one. If there's a bunch of catch and kill cases, the catch becomes, well, why are they catch and kill cases? Why is Donald Trump paying people for stories if those stories aren't true? You pay people for stories that are true that you're trying to bury. And in this case, what does that mean? If this has been going on, let's say for 10 years, and it's been going on for longer than 10 years, but if it's been going on for 10 years, that means that there are 10 years worth of stuff that Trump has been burying by paying the right people off in order to bury the story. If that stuff comes to light, what does that mean from the standpoint of, political, what political effect does that have on Trump? So let's hear him talk about this one.
Ask a question. Mr. Raskin had been asking you some questions, and one of the things in your answer was that Mr. Pecker expended other monies to protect Mr. Trump. Can you elaborate on what some of those other activities were?
Sure. There was the story about Mr. Trump having a love child with an employee, and actually the husband of that employee works for the company as well. And there was a elevator operator who claims that he overheard the conversation taking place between one of Mr. Trump's other executives and somebody.
Why do they call it a love child? Why do you call it a love child? It's really a sex child. I mean, all children, for the most part, are products of some kind of, penis and vagina, or some kind of thing. But if you're talking about some kind of affair that took place and they had a kid based on the affair, it was a lust child more so than a love child. It's like the Department of Defense. It's the Department of War. Let's be honest. Call it what it is. But nevertheless, let's just hear him.
And he ended up paying like $15,000 in order to buy that story to find out whether it was true or not. And that's just one example of things that David had done over the years. It was the reason why in the recording, when David was looking to become the CEO of Time magazine, we were concerned about, we'll call it the treasure trove of documents that had been created over the years, that if he left, somebody could open up the key to a drawer and find all this information. So we were going to look to buy all of those life rights and so on.
Gentleman's time expired. Mr. Norman.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
Question.
I mean, understand what he's saying. He's like, look, we've been paying people off in order to shut people up in regards to these stories. We've been buying the rights to these stories for the last God knows how many years. And this guy has been head of the organization at the time for these many years. And so for the most part, we could trust him to sit on these stories in the way that we expected these stories to be set on. However, if he's leaving, if somebody else comes into his place, it is possible that they stumble upon these stories that have accumulated over the past decade or more. And they may release these stories. So we were trying to buy the rights to stories that were damaging the Trump, meaning that there's a treasure trove of stories that are out there that may be damaging to Donald Trump. That's amazing. Let's see. All right, he's never been to Prague. How many times have Trump asked you to threaten an entity on his behalf? He says over 500, more than 500 times over the last 10 years. Trump manipulating poll numbers. Now, I'm not
Trump,
surprised by this one. I'm not even surprised by this one from the standpoint of the Democrats. People do that because human beings have this weird cognitive thing of looking around at other people for their explanation of reality. Meaning, it's like you see 10 people, those 10 people say some XYZ is true, then people tend to have a tendency to lump in to what people say is true. It's this odd quirk of reality, or this odd quirk of human consciousness, or human, the way we operate ourselves. We look around at other people to give us some context to what reality is. And when those people agree on a particular point, we tend to lump in with the group that agree. It's hard to kind of deviate from the norm in this case. Think about our society and how we treated gays and blacks and Hispanics and et cetera, et cetera. Like all of these groups for the most part, there is a norm, there's a standard, and things that deviate from the standard get pushed to the margins and attacked. I mean, look at how they treated socialists and communists. I know there was an economic reason for it, but at a certain point it became a cultural norm to marginalize these areas. What about UFOs? It makes all the sense to the world that people look up to the sky and say, is there anything there? But instead, that's not how that works. People with the belief or talks about it gets marginalized to the edges. You can go down the list of this stuff in society where it's a group that has a different way of operating, but that different way of operating gets marginalized just from the majority. People tend to have a cognitive bias on this case. It's the reason why Hillary Clinton will walk around saying, I have all of these votes and I have all of these superdelegates. Because if you look at it and it seems insurmountable, what's the point in going against Sanders? But there's also this thing of, well, all of these people have lumped in with Clinton, so I'm going to also lump in with Clinton. This is where the norm is going. This is where the majority is going. There's a reason why they do that to the polls. They want to give a misperception of how much support there is for their particular candidate. And it always helps to have your candidate looking like your candidate is winning in these areas. It helps. It helps. It helps. But let's hear him talk about this.
Being engaged in the election, I can only talk for myself. Here I would say to Mr. Trump, in response to his question, what's going on with Russia, I'm still waiting for documents. And then that night at a rally, he would turn around and do his battle cry of no Russia, no collusion, no involvement, witch hunt.
Okay, on a separate subject, but somewhat related. On January 17 of this year, the Wall Street Journal published a story stating that you hired John Gager, the owner of a consulting company who works for Liberty University in Virginia, to rig at least 2 online polls related to Donald Trump. Did you hire him?
Those were back in, I believe, 2015?
2014.
2014.
2014. So you did hire him?
Yes, I spoke with Mr. Gauger about manipulating these online polls.
And did he use bots to manipulate the poll?
He used algorithms, and if that includes bots, then the answer is yes.
Yes, that's accurate. Did the president have any involvement
Yes.
in directing you to do this?
Yes.
What were the results of the poll?
Exactly where we wanted them to be. In the CNBC poll, we came in at number 9. And the Drudge Report, he was top of the Drudge Report as well.
Okay.
Do you honestly believe that Donald Trump is the only one that did this with the polls? I mean, ultimately they were using bots in order to get the effect they wanted in the polling results. Hillary Clinton had a Twitter army. Do you honestly believe? I mean, what, the Democrat that was in, I forget the state, yeah, I can't remember the state, but gets bots in order to say that Russians were helping his opponent on this stuff. I mean, let's not be naive on this. This is not just Trump. This is politicians in general. All right, so last one, Rokana. Yeah, last one, Rokana. Ocasio did good. She went after him on nuts and bolts in regards to Donald Trump devaluing his property in New York, particularly a golf course that Donald Trump has in New York that he's reaping magnificent benefits from. And it's kind of making this point of taxes. Essentially, is he paying his fair share of taxes? And where can you get information on, to get
in
it
conspiracy?
across? And Rokana
Think executive too is Donald Trump Jr.
Yes.
They knew that this payment was false and illegal, correct?
I can't make that conclusion.
You told Representative Kelly that the president was aware of this scheme. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I just want the American public to understand the explosive nature of your testimony in this document. Are you telling us, Mr. Cohen, that the president directed transactions in conspiracy with Alan Weisselberg and his son, Donald Trump Jr., as part of a criminal conspiracy of financial fraud? Is that your testimony today?
Yes.
And do you know if this criminal financial scheme that the president, Alan Weisselberg, and Donald Trump Jr. are involved in is being investigated by the Southern District of New York?
I'd rather not discuss that question because it could be part of an investigation that's currently ongoing.
But I just want the American public to understand that solely apart from Bob Mueller's investigation, there is garden variety financial fraud. And your allegation and the explosive smoking gun document suggests that the president, his son, and his CFO may be involved in a criminal conspiracy. And isn't it true, Mr. Cohen, that this criminal conspiracy that involved 4 people, that there's only one person so far who suffered the repercussions, and that's why you're in jail?
We'll be going to jail, yes.
There are 3 other people, though, who were equally involved in this conspiracy. Is
Yes.
that true?
No, I thought Cohen was going to jail because he lied to Congress. In regards to the other stuff being a conspiracy, it's one thing is clear. There is another investigation or simultaneous investigations going beyond what the Mueller investigation is doing. And in those other investigations, they apparently have teeth. Donald Trump needs to... This is expanded beyond the Russiagate stuff. This has gone into going after Trump himself. And Cohen doesn't necessarily give them anything on the Russia-Trump collusion thing, but let's be honest. Whether you can give them anything on Russia-Trump collusion is almost irrelevant. If you can give other stuff that indicates crimes that have taken place, then you've given additional ammunition. It's a conversion of a advantage into some other advantage. In this case, again, no Trump or Russia collusion, but financial crimes, potentially. Is he being investigated? Yes. Has he done crummy, horrible stuff throughout the course of his career? Yes. And is there apparently a bunch of information about Donald Trump that could be completely damaging to Donald Trump that's floating about from stories that they paid to kill? The answer is also yes. Paying money, hush money to a porn star and then lying to his wife? Yes. Threatening high school and colleges so they won't release his grades? God, those grades must be horrendous. Screwing over small businesses. Deflation of their real estate or inflation of the real estate when he's trying to make himself look more rich. Using Trump's own charity in order to pay for a painting that Trump got for himself. This looks bad. All of this looks bad. All of this looks bad. Let's see. There was a super chat. Jamal Clyde says you think blacks can't be racist. It depends on what you mean by racist. It's not what I think. There's perspectives on it. It depends on what you mean on whether or not blacks are racist. Like, for example, if you take the definition that racism has to do with your ability to affect, to put into action. Like, I don't like whites. That's great. That's your opinion, dude. But I don't like whites, and I am using some level of political leverage or influence to make their lives miserable as such. Well, people would say, well, racism requires an element of ability to enact the fact that you're racist. Like, it's not just prejudice. It also goes beyond the fact that you're prejudiced into being able to do something to perpetuate the fact that you're prejudiced. And in this case, I guess the most explicit definition would be the ability to harm somebody else based on your own self-prejudice. If that's your definition of racism, then blacks don't necessarily have power to be racist. If your definition of racism is just simple prejudice, this person can be prejudiced against another, then yeah, anybody can be prejudiced against another person. Depends on what you mean by the terms. Oh God, Bobetterex HA. I hope I'm not saying it right. I have video proof of Jamarl making out with his hat when they were both drunk. I don't really drink though. I mean, you guys have seen me on the channel inebriated, I guess drunk on 1 or 2 occasions. But that's usually me coming back from something and doing this show immediately afterwards. And usually after the show, I am throwing up or out of commission for the next few days. That stuff needs to be dialyzed out of my system, and if it stays in my system for a while, I get ill. So I don't drink as often. Smoke pot, yes, that I do in spades. Jamarl Thomas, help the man hosting my show is not the real me. He is an evil shape-shifting robot. Don't trust him, Jamarl. Look at his evil robot eyes. They have no soul. That sounds like the Alex Jones thing. Alex Jones, the Asians form up like robots when they are under attack. It is the weirdest thing in the world. It's so bizarre. Let's see. Jamarl, you prejudiced against whites? No, I'm not prejudiced against anybody. I don't have a racist bone in my body. And I mean that. I don't. I look at the world through a particular lens. People are individuals, and as such, they want to have their own kind of individual determination, like anybody would want to have their own individual determination. Insofar as that doesn't adversely affect somebody else, have at it. In the same way that I want it, I would imagine that each and every other person would also want those things, meaning this issue of self-determination. I guess I'm talking about a certain degree of freedom. I look at this from my perspective and perpetuate it out. Also, I think for the most part, people are robots. In the same way that I was born into this body as an African American, the next person who's born into a body of somebody who's white, for the most part, we're made of the same things. Cultural differences, how we were raised, family differences, hell, geopolitical differences. Those things end up with different outcomes to the various people. But the fact that that person became who that person was means that if I was born into the same situation, I would have ended up being the same person. My point is this. I don't... The racism stuff never makes sense to me. The prejudice stuff doesn't necessarily make sense to me. Human beings are human beings. That's kind of the way I fall on stuff. Not to mention, I look at it from the perspective of an African American who's in a racial context that has been abused and maligned for centuries. I don't want that perpetuated on anybody else, let alone perpetuated on this race itself. The race thing is less relevant to me than the issues of class. Just saying. Bob Ramirez, I just hope they enjoy President Pence as having VP isn't enough. Yes, Bob, agreed. Agreed. Jamarl, do you know any prejudiced African Americans? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I know people, friends of mine, who would say outright that they don't like whites. They can interact with the, there are scars that haven't necessarily been mended. But again, this stuff depends on your definitions, what it means. I'm Salar. I haven't blocked you. I can see you comment right here. God Gnome, I've seen it. I just haven't been able to reply because Jamarl, you're not blocked. I'm looking at your comment right now. It's like, I'm being blocked. And it's like, are you saying you're being blocked? Yes, I'm being blocked. It's like, but you recognize that the very fact that you're saying I'm being blocked means you're not being blocked because you're able to say that I'm not being blocked. Just saying. Let's see. Meditating Jesus. Yeah, Jamarl, you're being real sketchy about honesty. What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. Let's see. Maybe I'm missing something in the chat. Potatoes have more biological diversity and DNA in humans. Yes. people have group preferences and tend to in-group with people who look and act like them. Yes, that is true. I mean, come on, there's a comfort level between individuals within particular groups. But that comfort level to some degree is just perpetuated just by where we are. It's not, it's not an act of God. It's an act of how we've perpetuated ourselves as human beings. Just saying. It's like there's no point where history stopped. Let's see. What am I missing? Ron Paul, I don't like white people either with hip hop and Juice WRLDs are pimping. What? Look, I every group is going to have people who are in that group that have some prejudices. It is what it is. I've known people who are iffy about homosexuals. I've known people who are iffy about things of race. I've known people. I mean, come on. It's just people are people. You end up talking to them. Let's see. No, Jamal wasn't raised to see color. He was raised to see people. Yes. Jamal, if I hang with David Duke, what would you think? I would think you're hanging with David Duke. I mean, you do understand that there are going to be all sorts of people who you interact with on a daily basis. And not all of those people are going to have a same political ideology or leanings that you have. I have friends that are Trump supporters. I have friends that are not. I have friends that are Hillary supporters. I have friends who, are iffy with whites. I have friends who are iffy about, well, friends is too strong. I would say I don't have any friends. I think I was having a conversation with my mom today. I was like, name one. And she wasn't able to name any. I tend to do the news all the time. But people I know, yeah, of course. It would be weird to not. It would be weird to not. Let's see. What does any of this have to do with the topic? Nothing. They're off the topic. I am solid. Tim Flowbug blocked me. Yeah. So what can you say? Yeah. Yeah, Jamal, you're being real shady about not being shady. Diane Thomas, Clyde, do you think Jamal? Oh God, don't engage. He's being a troll. Don't engage the trolls. He's been a troll. The real question: does Jamal see the color? Do you see progressive voice as a mini shake, as Russian mad cow? I don't. That's funny. I think Jamal has some preconceptions about the races, but that can be said about almost anyone. I mean, what preconceptions do you think I have? Maybe I'm missing something. Jamal calls whites trolls. No, I call trolls trolls. There's a different point in that. Friendship is more valuable than gold. Okay. Newspeak language alteration to stop people from using the word racism. Oh, I see what you mean. Well, most things, I've always made the point that it's not one perspective. Just saying, it's not. There's no such, you look at a particular issue and you can look at the issue from various perspectives when you're talking about the issue. It depends on what you call it. Again, I can stand by that. Depends on what you mean. Be honest, Jamal, why do you block me from Super Chats? I've never blocked you from Super Chats. Siler. We're discussing race a lot more than usual here. Yeah, we are. I'm not quite sure why. I suppose there's some people in the chat who are more ensconced in the identity stuff, but it's what it is. But I am Salar. You're not being blocked. You're not being blocked. Judging folks by the smell of their cooking. Sad. It's funny. Salar is H.A. Goodman. Salar is not H.A. Goodman. Relay race, car race, boat race. Yeah, Tim, they're talking about other kinds of race. So, Welcome to Jamal Caters to the chat's viewing hour. I don't know what that means. But they can't steal money laundering on the Russian oligarchs. CNN told me so. Yeah, good luck with that. H.A. Goodman needs to stick his head in the car door and slam it. Why are you guys hating on H.A.? How did this get to H.A. Goodman? That's funny. Alright, I'm going to end this because at this point we're just talking about fuckery. Bat mashups. You have to wonder why some people are so obsessed with it. Look, I've said it before. I think this stuff boils down more so to issues of class than race. I just do. But not everybody takes that point of view, so it is what it is. Mrs. Tree, I will be supporting Cohen for president. Oh, that's sad. It's the 60-minute, 10-minute show, Dax Jacobson. Yes. I'm going to end this. Is that feelings in Bernie's accent or what? Oh, God. Is fuckery a racist term, and does H.A. Goodman engage in fuckery? Fuckery is not a racist term, Elephants on Coke. Fuckery is perfectly okay. Fuckery is fair game. I don't think fuckery is racist. I don't know how that would be racist. When I melt a pot, I get stoned. Do you now? Can blind people take racism seriously? So I'm going to end this on this. The David Chappelle thing. The Klansman. The black Klansman that just so happened to be blind, and he was going out there, screaming bloody murder about blacks and everything else, and he finally reveals himself as, oh God, that's so fucking funny. Damn, that's so funny. Thanks for the show, Jamal. Gonna have to watch it again because the chat is so distracting. Yeah, we get trolls sometimes. It is what it is. I'm a bastard with no class. Alright, I'm going to end this here. I have one more Cohen one where they saw it. One of the ladies, I can't think of her name, calls something that took place racist. And it goes back and forth where Meadows gets really offended by this. And in getting really offended by this, they have a back and forth where Lewis has to kind of make ends meet. And Meadows appeals to Lewis saying, look, I'm offended by this. I have black people in my family. I am not racist, and I need you to indicate and make sure that people understand this because this is in a congressional record. He was pissed. Like, he was entirely pissed. So I think that's fascinating, the back and forth between those two. So I'm going to end it here, and I will see you guys probably in a few. I have another one with the Trump and Russia stuff with Aaron Matei talking to Cenk Uygur, and I may do that one next and come back to the Cohen stuff. So I'll see you guys in a few. Thanks all.